What's up everyone? We're back with another tutorial in Cubase. Someone in the comments had asked me if I could do a tutorial on signal flow in Cubase, and I love it when people have comments like that because I can, and I am more than happy to, and that's what I'm going to do today. So in order to talk about signal flow in Cubase, we can talk very quickly about inputs and outputs. Inputs and outputs will be dependent upon what audio interface you're using. So I'm using a little 2-channel interface, but so as you can see, both channels, because of the software package I'm using to record my screen, are going. But if I were to actually have this set up in my recording setup, it would be just the left channel on my 2-channel interface, and I would record into mono tracks, which I did before the tutorial. And this is a mono track, and it's very simple. This is some audio, this is some audio, this is some audio, this is some audio. Cool. But as you can see, it's stereo. So what I could do is record in stereo, and the signal flow is it comes from your stereo in to whatever track you've routed to. Now that doesn't mean you can't put inserts on your stereo in, and inserts on your stereo in, it's totally possible, and if you know what you're doing, it could save you some time theoretically. However, I feel like inputs on your stereo in are a bit of a risky battle, because anything you put you have to keep, because it will print to the audio track, if that makes any sense. So just for sake of argument, let's do a Steinberg delay. That'll ping pong delay, ping pong. 16th note sounds good. So there's a delay on the input channel, and you will see that when I record this track here. Because that's a stereo track, I'll add an audio track, stereo, delay. Okay, now check this out. There will be a delay, there will be a delay. There will be a delay, there will be a delay. So as you can see, the whatever you put on the inserts gets printed to it, and you can't change it after the fact, as opposed to audio tracks where this is what we're dealing with here. This is some audio, this is some audio. You can adjust however you'd like. And so I would suggest that you don't put inserts on your stereo in unless you really know what you're doing, and you have something specific you're going for, and you know what your gain will be, and there's got a lot of factors that make inserts on your stereo in a viable option. But most of the time I would suggest that you put them on the audio tracks after you've recorded them, because you have the flexibility to change them. So that is stereo in. Now if you have a multiple input device, you may see more than just stereo in, where you routing, I can choose either my left input or my right input. That's because I only have 2 inputs. Now if you had a 18 input device, you may see, you know, a much bigger matrix, and you might have a whole studio wired up with synths and guitar amps and bass amps and other sound sources just ready to roll, and your routing will be a little bit more intense for what channel you choose for your input routing and your output routing. So I have a stereo out as my main bus out. Now if you do an audio track, we can add an audio track, you'll see you have configuration here. I can do mono or stereo. I can't really do any of these because I don't have the inputs, but you can do like left, right, center, sub, or 5 speakers, so center channel, 2 surrounds, and 2 main stereos, or 5.1, which is that same setup with a subwoofer, or you have all of these as well. So there's a lot of flexibility in the input routing in Cubase. You just sort of need to have the setup to be able to handle it. And since I'm using a 2 in, 2 out essentially interface in Cubase, I only record in either mono or stereo, and my output routes to a pure stereo out, if that makes any sense. And that's just the hardware side of the signal flow. Now, back in the day, of course, you would know your signal flow because you'd have a microphone going into a preamp. That preamp might go into a compressor. That might go into the desk or the tape machine, and you would know exactly what went to what. Here in the modern age, it's a little bit more confusing, but it's also way more flexible, and you have the ability to do more to each track. So in order to see signal flow, I think that it's good to hit this E here. And you'll see E, you could hit it here as well. So here, or on the mixer, you can hit it here. And you have basically a few ways that the signal goes, but we'll talk about on the track itself. You have 6 pre-fader inserts, and then these last 2 inserts in Cubase are post-fader. So, and then you have the fader. And you also have the channel strip, which is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more inserts, but you have to use the Cubase inserts. So that's gate, compressor, EQ, the tools, which is the de-esser and the transient shaper, or the envelope shaper, and the saturators, so magneto 2, tape saturation, and tube saturation, and your limiters, whether it's a hard limiter, standard limiter, a maximizer, or a brick wall limiter. Here's a little tip about signal flow. This, you can move the strip before or after the insert's position. And I typically like the strip before the insert's position. And the reason why is because I mostly use the EQ, and I'll do it, the EQ, I'll do a high pass or something. And so it's basically to clean up the audio. For my tone shaping, I'll use other EQs, whether it's frequency, which is a Steinberg EQ, or studio EQ in Steinberg, or third-party plugins like Waves to do tone shaping with the EQ. But I have the strip first because it's sort of like a toolkit. And you can see, move channel strip to post inserts. So that means that these 6 will be before the inserts. Now, if you move it to post inserts, that means that these 6 are after the signal chain of the inserts. So you can have 6 plugins in here, whatever you want, and this is some audio, 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 and those will all be pre-filter. These last 2, pre-fader. These last 2 are post-fader. So even if the strip is behind the inserts, these 2 will actually be behind the strip because they're behind everything. And post-fader is where you like to have, I don't know, limiting, so that the limiting is done after the fader. I also sometimes, I guess if you were doing dithering, you could put that post-fader as well. That's basically the stuff you'd like to have post-fader. I like to put my analyzers post-fader. If you have analyzer plugins, like I have this one from Waves, the Paz analyzer. So you can open this up and you know what's going on after the fader. With the inserts before, these still come after everything. After everything in the strip, after everything in the inserts rack. And there's a few other things that you should know about routing and signal flow in Cubase. Your group tracks, we can add a group channel, stereo, we'll call it group. And you can route the audio to group, and you will see it here on the fader. This is some audio, this is some audio, this is some audio, this is some audio. And what you get is actually another round of 6 inserts and another strip to work with if you route it to a group track. So if you're concerned about Cubase's flexibility in terms of only having 6 inserts and then of course the 6 that you get with the strip, you can always route it to a group and you get 6 more. Because I've seen people complaining about that before, but I don't think it's that big a deal. And another thing for signal flow is your sends. I mean, you could send this to the group track as well. It'll double it up, but let's turn this down. This is some audio, 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 this is some audio. So you can also send the audio. So that covers most of the basics of signal flow in Cubase. I hope you guys have found this useful. If you did, feel free to like or subscribe, and take care of yourselves, everyone. Bye-bye.